Good afternoon, folks. Welcome back to the Food for the Faithful channel with the reluctant prophet, who is somewhat less reluctant today because I have a story to tell you. I like to speak about things of which I have personal experience, and this is something that I experienced myself. A friend of mine from the Peace, Order, and Good Government group, otherwise known as POG, remarked today on one of my frequent and many posts about the prevailing skullduggery in government and the telling silence or complacency on the part of the press to report on it, if only the media could become ethical, because a significant part of the population needs to wise up. This is certainly true, so we must ask ourselves, what changed from the days when investigative journalism was expected to hold the government accountable? Since the legacy media no longer plays a key role in holding politicians and public servants' feet to the fire, what has changed between then and now? The answer to that is both simple and complex. It is a story of the cunning and uncanny successes of some of the most pernicious pathogens ever to parasitize public discourse. And it involves a long march through the institutions, which provides today's segue into my story, my first confrontation with a cultural Marxist child studies professor from Brock University over a decade ago. I was at Brant Parker's open mic jam one evening at one of our favorite watering holes in Thorold, Ontario. Donnelly's Pub is known for hosting blues, with Brant as the preeminent band leader, guitar virtuoso, and their booking agent. One of the frequent guests of Brant's jam, who was an acquaintance of mine as well, was a chap by the name of Hans Scottmeyer. Hans is a saxophonist by night and a child studies professor by day. Hans had also played in a couple of gigs I had booked as well, since he is a very capable sax player. It turned out, however, on the night in question, that I found he had a more far-reaching talent, namely in disseminating postmodern literary criticism and cultural Marxist critical theory to his students. We became involved in a discussion about his Marxist ideas when I asked him if he felt it would be necessary for the Marxist revolution to become violent. His answer was telling. He stated, "We do not think so. We believe we can march through all the institutions to capture them from within." Boy, was he right, both then and now. So here is his bio. Hans Scottmeyer is a professor in the Child and Youth Studies Department of Brock University. He is cross-appointed to the graduate program in popular culture, as well as being core faculty for the interdisciplinary PhD in humanities and adjunct faculty in the Child and Youth Care program at the University of Victoria. His undergraduate work was in comparative literature, and he holds a master's in education, in educational psychology, both from the University of Washington. MED in educational psychology, both from the University of Washington. His doctoral work includes 2 PhDs from the University of Minnesota. The first is in adult education, and a second from the Cultural Studies and Comparative Literature Department in Comparative Studies in Discourse and Society. Research interests include radical and political approaches to youth-adult relations, subcultures, critical disability studies, and anti-psychiatry, post-capitalist subjectivity, post-Marxist politics, undoing whiteness, and political readings of popular culture. He is the author of Youth Subcultures on Creative Force, Creating New Spaces for Radical Youth Work, co-author with Chris Richardson of Habitus of the Hood, and co-editor with Kay Garibaghi and M. Kruger of With Children and Youth. He has published multiple articles, reviews, and book chapters. Yes, post-capitalist subjectivity, post-Marxist politics, undoing whiteness, and political readings of popular culture. Well, you simply can't make that shit up. And man, has it ever been successful in capturing the minds of perhaps the majority of those who were subject to it in the academy. Life to the cultural Marxist is all about power. Ethics is an outdated idea invented by privileged white men to force compliance to arbitrary standards that serves the patriarchy and other such nonsensical drivel. So, to my friend who posed the original question regarding the media becoming ethical, ethics does not serve the revolution, so why should they? From the universities, these ideas have spread into every aspect of common parlance and social order. Its dictates are now being enforced by radical legislation that flies in the face of English common law and the Charter. These facts, too, must also be ignored to further the cultural revolution, and nothing must be permitted to stop that process. Mischaracterization, tautology, gaslighting, mockery, and derision, which were once considered to be deeply unintellectual and indicative of a weak mind, are now the rule of the day. Worse, this gross perversion of the very function of higher education is guised in terms that make it sound just, fair, and equitable, so that they can silence others while enforcing blind compliance to dictates which are so incoherent and arbitrary that it leaves me wondering what could, or indeed what would, cause anyone to fall prey to them. In 2014, when I was still living in Norway, I had not yet fully comprehended the nature of the ideology which was causing the Norwegian government to apparently sabotage its own stated agendas, only then to emerge as the only one who could address the very problems that they had caused. This is, of course, the direct result of toxic thinking capturing many of the folks tasked with achieving the goals which were seldom being met. I am convinced now that this was deliberate, since the key to understanding Marxism is that it is hell-bent on destruction and tearing things down. Some working in the system may not have been fully aware that this is Marxism's goal. However, this is its actual agenda. We need not wonder then why since 2015, under Trudeau's radical neo-Marxist agenda, we have been witnessing such a concerted attack on our economy, our personal freedom, accompanied by a legislated increase in state censorship along with mandated speech laws. Trudeau's attack on our energy sector, our economy, and our personal autonomy has but one goal: to collapse the current system and institute total Marxist state control, a form of totalitarianism under the kid-glove guise of kindness. Life in Trudeau's Canada is like being smothered to death with a fluffy pillow covered in a rainbow flag pillowcase. My wife, however, was not deceived by this agenda, either in 2014 or today. Back in 2014, I was losing what little was left of my sanity. I asked her to put a name to this doctrine of destruction, this philosophical parasite, this ideological idiocy. She then asked me, in her charming Norwegian accent, which I will attempt to emulate, "Have you read about the Frankfurt School of Cultural Marxism and its doctrine of critical theory, Billy boy?" No, I replied, despite my previous encounter that night 2 or 3 years prior in Thorold with Professor Hans, to which she answered, "Well, you better read up on it now, because that's what you're seeing." So here we are, at the tail end of a Marxist cultural revolution that many of you might not even be cognizant of, even though many will be well aware of the idiotic woke agenda that it has spawned. The daily hit to our economic well-being, the doubling of interest rates, which we saw take place under Canada's first incarnation of Marxism under P.E. Trudeau, is happening yet again under his ideologically addled son, Justin. We are witnessing the deliberate ruination of our energy sector, which could have easily eased the burden of debt caused by Trudeau's litany of failed and costly policies. Even if we were to elect another leader with better policies, we need to recognize that our ideological enemies were right. We must take back the institutions that they have parasitized from within. The first and foremost intellectual parasite that is infecting society today is the necessity of ridding ourselves of the delusional mindset brought about by cultural Marxist revolutionaries who have gained the system against the common man. Right, Dr. Hans? After all, this is how you and your ilk have managed to be so completely successful in your attempt to tear it all down. You have managed to turn our sacred institutions into hermit crabs. The outer shell may look the same, but it is no longer indicative of the insipid and bloodless creature that dwells within it, a hideous creature of your creation. So these are my thoughts to think and pray about today, as we are faced not with the onset of a cultural Marxist revolution, but of a revolution that has been utterly successful in permanently altering our society if we don't manage to end it.